Incoming.
Hey friends, welcome back to From the Bunker with Bunker Bros. I'm here today with Mikael Cook. He deployed to Afghanistan a few years ago, a couple years before the withdrawal. He ended up having a very intense experience with the withdrawal and helping get some of our allies there and some of his personal friends he made while he was deployed. He served in the Army Reserves. He is now out. He was a staff sergeant. And he has a very incredible story to tell. After listening to the audiobook version of his book, I have to say I was extremely moved, having spent, almost 2 years there, and it's an incredible story, and we wanted to bring him on today to share it with everyone here. So, Mikael, what I like to do is start with a little introduction on how you ended up getting in the military, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Great. Well, first off, thank you for having me on the show. Really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about my book that's called Life and Death at Abbey Gate. And I guess starting with your question, how I joined the military in the first place. I think that the military was something that was always kind of on the back of my mind as a kid growing up. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, so, a pretty liberal town where it's not very common to see people join the military. So I didn't have any friends or family that had served in the past. But it was something, like I said, that was always there. And I grew up, like most Michigan kids do, playing hockey and playing team sports. And I think that, growing up playing hockey was one of the big reasons that I ended up joining, actually, because I always had that team mentality, right? Like always being a part of something bigger than myself, always having a common goal with my, comrades or teammates, you could say. So grew up playing hockey, played through high school and played through college. So then I think really when that was over, like I had a little honeymoon phase after college because I wasn't playing anymore, and it was kind of nice to have that freedom. And I moved out to California and I was living there for a couple years. And then I think at that point, the honeymoon phase kind of ended for me. And I was like, okay, I'm missing something in my life here and I don't really know what it is. But I think I fairly quickly realized that I was missing that community and being, that sense of a team and being part of a bigger organization. So that's really when I made the decision that, hey, I'm going to go give this a try. And I picked up with a recruiter out there in California and decided to join the Army Reserves.
Okay. I remember in your book talking about it was Newport Beach, correct?
It was, yeah. I lived in Newport Beach and Huntington Beach for about 5 or 6 years.
Okay. I'm actually, while I'm here in Michigan like you now, I'm actually from Southern California.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I'm from the Inland Empire, and I like to go down to Huntington and Newport a lot, so I know the area.
Very cool.
Yeah, awesome area. So yeah, you're missing that camaraderie, and I mean that's a pretty intense way to get it back to join the military. But that's a pretty cool story to have someone who did that a little later in life. I know you were doing pretty well too. It wasn't like you were struggling or anything.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I went to basic when I was 27, or I had my 27th birthday when I was there. So, that was a very weird experience for me, right? Just being around a lot of young kids. And I specifically remember probably a week into basic training, one of the drill sergeants looks at me and he's kind of just like giving me the up and down look. And he can tell I'm an older guy. And he just looks at me and he says, "Where the fuck were you during the war when my friends were dying?" I was just like, oh,
damn.
No, like this is going to suck.
Dude,
So,
people do not understand the way that, I mean, I was in the Marine Corps prior, but that the way the military, the drill sergeants and drill instructors can break you down like no one else on planet Earth.
It's very impressive. There was one drill sergeant named Drill Sergeant Tsunami that I talked about a bit in the book. And to this day, I would probably be terrified if I ever ran into him.
That's just such a deep dig, man. But yeah, so it's really cool that you did that from a place of being comfortable. I joined right out of high school and kind of knew what I wanted to do, so very different circumstance. But so you get through that, basic training, that's got to be tough to be. There's a lot more to break down there than being fresh out of high school. So,
Hmm.
you know, um, so tell us about what's it like coming out of basic training, being a little bit older. I'd like to hear that perspective.
Yeah, so I went to basic training with everybody else, all the young kids, and there's a couple guys that were a bit older too. So I think I was the oldest, but not by much. So you just kind of put your head down and just get through it like everyone else, right? And then obviously after that, I went to AIT. I was a 12 whiskey engineer, so I went down to Gulfport, Mississippi, to a naval base to train with the Seabees down there, which
Okay.
is the Navy's version of engineers.
So your
Great
heavy
experience.
equipment?
What's that?
Is that heavy equipment?
12 whiskey is vertical engineering.
Okay.
12 November, I think, is the big equipment. I'm pretty
That
sure.
sounds right, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was a whiskey. So we did, the majority of the Army's building. So building jocks and bee huts and, whatever the Army needed built. That's what 12 whiskeys do. So
Okay.
went down to Gulfport, was there for 7 weeks. And then as a reservist, once you're done with your training, you just go home and you start living your normal life except for your drill weekend. So, I did that for about 2 years before the deployment. And it was kind of a cakewalk.
Yeah. What was your civilian life like in that first couple years before you went to Afghanistan?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it was easy. I had a civilian job working construction, and that was my full time job, except for the few weekends that I had to do in the couple weeks in the summer.
Okay.
So yeah, just kind of carried on with life until we got that deployment order.
Okay. And then I know when I was younger, you know, going on deployment, it's pretty exciting and everything. What did that feel like for you? Like you finally get to do your job? Like it was pretty
Hmm.
exciting for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was pumped, right? I think for the most part, the people that join the military because they want to be there, they want to deploy. I think for the most part, right? It's the people
Hmm.
that maybe don't necessarily want to be there that don't want to deploy. For me, I was so pumped. I mean, we didn't know where we were going. We knew we were going somewhere in the Middle East. I had been, secretly praying to go to Afghanistan the entire time because that's where I really wanted to go. I wanted to see the terrain. I wanted to see the culture and the people, and just kind of experience what life would be like there.
Hmm.
So we get to Kuwait. Well, first we go to Texas to do our workup for like a month, I think. Then we go to Kuwait, and I'll never forget it. As soon as we arrive in Kuwait, just exhausted, some second LT stands up on a bench. He wasn't in our chain of command, and he says, "You guys aren't going anywhere. You're going to be here here in Kuwait for the entire year." And we were just like, "Oh no."
Devastation.
Devastation is the most accurate word I can even think of. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like 125 degrees and miserable, and there's obviously nothing to do there.
Dude, I honestly feel like they filmed the Tatooine scenes from Star Wars in Kuwait. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible. So, luckily he was wrong, and we were there for probably a week, I think. And then
Hmm.
we got our deployment orders to go to Afghanistan. And, we were all just so pumped to get out of that heat and get out of the nothingness that is Kuwait. So, fly into Bagram in the middle of the night. And again, I'll never forget this moment stepping off the plane, stepping off that C-17 at Bagram Airfield, and just feeling that cold mountain air hit you in the face, and
Hmm.
walking down the tarmac. And a couple fighter jets took off right next to us as we were walking to reception, and it was just so cool. And it was the middle of the night, so we couldn't see any of the surroundings. Had no idea that how gorgeous it was until we stepped
Okay.
out of the barracks that next morning and looked around. So that was pretty cool.
All right. Yeah, I spent my second deployment there.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar, and we slept right there by what's called the Pink Palace, right by what was the flight line. And
Okay.
uh, yeah, I know those mountains very well. We used to drive up there and everything. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
we didn't spend too much time at Bagram. I think we were there for like 3 days at the beginning and maybe a few days at the end. But man, it's gorgeous.
yeah. And then you headed up northeast, correct?
Yeah, so I immediately headed up to Mazar Sharif, to Camp Marmal, which was a German-run base up in Mazar Sharif. And so we were there for a few months at the beginning of the deployment.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's where the book starts, right? Because that's where I meet
Yep.
Abdul and Mohammed. And,
Yeah.
it starts as just a working relationship, just guys that we worked with all the time because we were engineers and we needed materials. But quickly developed into just a really strong friendship. And they took really good care of me and all the guys, and would bring us, home cooked meals from their wives, like cooked lamb and naan bread and rice. And I mean, it was just so good. So we really developed our relationship when I was there for a few months.
Yeah. Speaking of the food there, I'd have to say Iraq was a little more bland, and then so was Syria. Syria had more flavor than Iraq, I think, but the Afghanistan, the food I ate around Bagram and that area, wow, dude.
You can't beat it. It's just
Yeah.
it's crazy how good it is. It just makes me wonder how
Mhm.
the hell they're making this stuff.
I feel like they just season it 10 times more than everyone, but with like less salt. Like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But yeah, so I think before we get into that a little more, I think it's easy in I don't know if it's just our generation. Maybe if you're reading in a book previous to all the digital media we have, to not really understand, like, everyone around the world is just like you and me here in the United States. Yes, we have so much more technology, and being in a first world country has its challenges where you lose sight of some things and life gets overly busy, I think. But all of those people are people just like you and me talking
Mm-hmm.
here with real lives and families and all the challenges and health problems, and they all need food, shelter, and all these things that we need,
Mm-hmm.
and they bleed just like us. And uh so the fact that you built this connection with someone, like across the world from us, and as we talk here, if you haven't read the book, you guys we'll definitely shout it out some more. But the fact that you built this connection and had such an incredible journey is just amazing. And I think people need to remember that everyone around the world is just like us, and they all matter just as much as us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an important thing that people can really grasp from this book. So,
Well, thanks for saying that, and I totally agree. I mean, it's amazing how easy it is to connect with somebody when you try, right?
yeah,
And like you said, it's like they want the same things that Americans want. They want peace. They want to be able to take care of their families, and they just want to lead long, healthy, happy lives, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's the same everywhere you go.
yeah. So Michael, you built up a relationship with Abdul while you're working up there in Mazar Sharif and at Camp Marmal. And so tell us just about your relationship while you were there.
Yeah, so like I said, it started just as a working relationship where we as engineers needed materials, and they were the guys that could get it. And so we'd see him every day, and occasionally, make some jokes and laugh with them a little bit. And then it very quickly I could tell that they were just really good people.
Mm-hmm.
Similar age to me, obviously completely different backgrounds, nothing in common from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
But we just connected immediately and just developed a really strong friendship very fast. And I remember when I got my orders to leave Mazar Sharif and head down to Camp Moorhead right outside Kabul, like I was sad because that meant that I was never going to see Abdul or Muhammad again. Like that was one thing that I knew was obvious, is I was never going to see these men again.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sad. And I went and told them I was leaving and gave them a handshake and a hug. And I think I talk about it a little bit in the book. I kind of just held a smile for our last goodbye. And they surprised me with a traditional Afghan outfit that they had made for me, which was very cool. And I obviously still have it today. And
Mhm.
as I was walking away, I remember I made this joke, or I thought it was a joke at the time, and I said, "You guys should come see me in Michigan sometime,"
Yeah.
knowing full well that was never going to happen, right?
Right.
And it's funny, how profound that sentence was now. How many years? 4 years later, looking back on, because obviously they're here in Michigan. Spoiler alert! But
Yeah.
yeah, it's so cool just to be able to spend time with them and their families now.
So you end up leaving. So you guys exchanged phone numbers or WhatsApp at the time, or how did you stay in contact?
Yeah, so me and Abdul exchanged WhatsApp numbers, and we communicated pretty frequently throughout the rest of my deployment. And then same when I got home, but it became a little less frequent, obviously, as time went on.
Mm-hmm.
Just the natural progression of knowing you were never going to see this person again, and then really our communication didn't pick back up until summer of 2021, as the threat of the Taliban started becoming clear to everyone in Afghanistan.
Yeah. I'd say like pause there for a second and just a
Hmm.
reminder to everyone. Being in the military profession, whether it's the men and women you deployed with or the people you met on deployment, uh, it's kind of heart wrenching to be in a place where maybe you're in danger, maybe you're not, but to be in a place isolated with those people every single day for about a year, and then it's just over. And that's really cool that you kept in contact. I know it died, of course, it dies off a bit, but
Hmm.
I just want to send a quick reminder to everyone to reach out and don't forget about those people who suffered with you or laughed with you or went through that challenge with you, because they can understand what you've been through, and understand you on a level a lot of people can't when you spend that much time together. So
Hmm. It's a great point, and honestly, like, it even goes for the people that, the U.S. troops that we deploy with. Like,
yeah.
it's weird when you come home, right? It's because it's just this weird experience that you had that was maybe horrible, maybe it was awesome. It just all of a sudden comes to an end, and you're back in reality, and it just, like, it's a
Hmm.
weird transition, and you don't see those people. Some of them you don't see ever again, but you know that you have, like, such a strong relationship with them.
Yeah, and it's even weirder if you're a reserve component, National Guard
Hmm.
reserves, to just
Yeah.
go back to your other life.
Yeah, it's so odd. And even if you're still, like, drilling with that unit, like, you can just feel the difference of being on deployment and then being back in, like, drill mode, right? Like, the
Hmm.
seriousness is just all of a sudden gone, and it's a
Yeah.
very weird feeling. So I remember when I got back, I still had a couple years left on my contract, and it just kind of, it was horrible because it just felt like such a joke being back here in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, I can for sure. So so you and Abdul, your communication starts ramping up because we're obviously about to leave Afghanistan in 2021. Um, there's a lot of different ways to look at this and dissect it, and how we should have or shouldn't have done it, whether we should have left. Um, you know, I'm sure I know I have strong feelings about it, but
Hmm.
that's you know a lot of that's there's a lot of complications there, and that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about Michael and a large group of people around the world took action in this situation and saved lives, and um, just being a man or woman of action is what really matters, and doing what's right and doing the next right thing. Uh, so we're about to leave Afghanistan. Michael and Abdul, their communication starts ramping up, and it's going to lead to some amazing things here. So, Michael, tell us about what starts happening in 2021.
So the Taliban starts kind of taking over perimeter cities of Afghanistan, after we took off. After we took off the first time, and there's we could talk about the failures all day, but I think one thing that's important to note is just the failures in intelligence of how long the Afghan National Army, the ANA, was going to be able to hold out without us.
Mm-hmm.
There was reports from all different intelligence agencies from the United States saying all different things, but essentially they were all saying something along the lines of, yeah, the ANA is going to be able to hold out for 6 months, a year, indefinitely. And they'll be, no matter what, they'll be able to hold Kabul, the capital. Like the Taliban's not going to be able to take that. Clearly that was never had we made an assessment so wrong, because the Taliban swept across the country very fast in less than a week, right? And they took all the perimeter cities, and then they took Mazar Sharif and Kandahar, and you name it. And then all of a sudden, they're at the kind of the steps of Kabul, right? And Abdul Mohammed at this point had left Camp Marmal because it had been shut down, and they had fled down to Kabul to hide with some family that they had living there, because that's where they're originally from, is Kabul. And that's, like you said, that's really when communication really picked up, and I started talking to Abdul on a daily basis. And another thing I'll never forget is me and him FaceTiming one day, and I think probably early August 2021, and he's holding his newborn baby, who's a female. It's a little girl named Bahishta, and we're FaceTiming just about like, hey, the Taliban's coming. We don't know what we're gonna do. And I was sitting exactly where I'm sitting now in my kitchen, and I was sitting here with my mother. And Abdul was showing us Bahishta, and my mother's kind of standing behind me, and she just has to step off screen because she gets emotional, because she realizes what's about to happen to this little girl. Like, this little girl, not only is Abdul's life over, this little girl is, just completely fucked.
Yeah.
And she's never going to go to school. She's never going to have a job. She's never going to leave the house without her face covered or without a male escort. Her future is being ripped away from her as we're FaceTiming in the moment. And it was just like such a heavy moment.
I mean, let's be real, even worse things happen to women over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's just for starters, is the list I just said.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what kicked off, I guess, the whole series of events. Is Abdul started asking if there was any way he could get out of the country and come to America. And we kind of just left the conversation with like, okay, like, let's pause. Let's both, do some digging and just see if there's any way. And I remember hanging up and just looking at my mom and saying, I really don't think there's anything that I can do. What could I possibly do to help immigrate, a refugee to America? Like, I have no idea where to even begin.
Yeah.
So then Abdul started looking into the Special Immigrant Visa Program, also known as SIV. And so he calls me back and he's like, hey, there's this SIV application that I can fill out for. And SIV is it's a visa for any of our Afghan or Iraqi partners that has worked with the U.S. government for a certain amount of years. I want to say it's 2 years, I think. Okay. And if you work with us for 2 years, then essentially our promise is, if anything bad should happen to your country, we will take you to America and we will protect you because you protected us and you stood shoulder to shoulder with us for X amount of years.
But then it is a government program and our promises are BS, so that's the road we go down here.
It unfortunately was complete BS, and it wasn't intended to be BS. We just weren't set up to properly handle such a large influx of applicants at once, which we should have been. This should have been the most obvious thing ever. You would think, during a military evacuation, that we would get our allies and our equipment out before, boots leave the ground. But maybe that's for another conversation.
Hey, I don't get it, man. If you hired a whole bunch of business people who are good at forecasting and logistics, they would get it done. But the government, us being veterans, if you ever tried the VA, you're like, yeah, I get it. Anything government ran, it just doesn't work. So
right, exactly. So anyway, I think my first step was going to Michigan Senator Debbie Stabenow. And so I called her office. They were honestly phenomenal. They wanted to help. Mm-hmm. They truly were set up for failure by the State Department as well, because there was just no way that they could help me. So
Yeah.
Their advice was fill out the special immigrant visa documents so they can apply for the SIV, and then have them go home and wait to be called by the State Department for evacuation.
Yeah.
I knew immediately that that was not going to work, right? I knew that immigration policy in the United States was not going to work in a month. And here we are 3 years later, over 3 years later, and they still don't even have case numbers. So
Really?
it was just pathetic. And
I know
so that,
your last update, I know they hadn't, but I figured maybe by now. But
mhm. So yeah, I mean, they're here and they're safe, but yeah, they're not going to be able to stay on the special immigrant visa program. We're working on other ways for them to have a path to citizenship.
okay.
But that's really what kicked off like the whole digital Dunkirk network search is kind of realizing that proper channels were not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's really when I took to Instagram, and I was like, I just got to message every single military person I know and just see if anybody has any possible way to get them through the gate and get them out of the country.
Hmm.
And that's where I just kind of discovered that this digital Dunkirk network already existed, right? Like I certainly wasn't part of setting it up or anything, but people like Tom Schumann and Chris Davis, who I talk about in the book, had been working on essentially setting up these channels for a while at this point. And I don't even think that they realized what they were creating
Uh-huh.
at the time. They were just trying to help get their guys out, and it just kind of connected a whole bunch of people from different walks of life just to help get out as many of our Afghan partners as possible. So it was really cool to see.
Yeah, I was impressed the way everyone connected and got on. Uh, we use Signal in OIR now.
Mm-hmm.
Like what a tool it has become. That's really cool. And then you get all these people you don't even know. And what I thought was amazing about what is called Digital Dunkirk now and is how the veteran community once again came together shoulder to shoulder, figuratively this time,
Mm-hmm.
to get something done. I mean, if you go back to post World War One and veterans camping out on the White House lawn to get benefits and things like that, and when it comes down to it, like I was talking about at the beginning of our podcast, you decided to be a man of action about something that was important to you, as it should be, saving your friend and his family, and all of the veterans involved in this is just mind blowing, and citizens and people who work in the Department of Defense and all these places is just incredible.
Yeah, it
And
was. It was amazing to see. And you think about the military community and how just like crude and divisive we can be towards each other, right? And it
yeah,
was just so awesome to see everyone come together. And I remember I talked about it a bit in my book. I think I said something along the lines of, it allowed digital Dunkirk allowed me to put my uniform back on, right? And kind
hmm
of get back in the fight. Which is, something that everybody I think misses when they come home from deployment, is putting that uniform back on. And so it really gave me a chance to be a soldier again. So
yeah,
it was incredible to see.
yeah, that's awesome. So, um, you run across all these challenges. The SIV thing is kind of just a last hope, but at least you have the documents in order for a backup. Like, hey, we at least have this application process. So you go through all these challenges of even getting that done. You get it done, even though the contractor, the basically the people who were in charge of Abdul technically can't get a hold of them. They won't write a letter. Blah blah blah. There's all these loopholes.
Hmm.
You get the process done or started, and then you're trying to get these your friend Abdul and his family uh, to the Kabul airport while there's just thousands, maybe even millions, I don't know, of people all getting there at the same time trying to get in this mass confusion. And you start talking with like CIA groups and just whatever you can do to get them in. Um, in Michael's book, something that really struck me I mean, these people are so desperate and they just want to save their children. And I get that. I have an 18-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and a 2-month-old. So like, you would do anything for them. But I mean, and he ends up interviewing a lot of the Marines from 2-1 that were there on the ground and some of the things that they've seen. And we're talking about, this is going to be a very serious podcast today, but this is a story that people need to hear. And I mean, families were throwing their babies over walls, and some Marines were talking about babies getting stuck in razor wire and bleeding to death before they could get to them. Or how they, the State Department and all these organizations that are running the evacuations in the Department of Defense weren't totally prepared for the baby situation. And they had to fly babies out that got through as fast as they could to other countries so that they can even survive. I mean, babies don't just, they need breast milk or formula, and it's just a mass of humanity and desperation because of bad planning on our parts. Really, I'm sure some of this would have happened either way, but it just seems like needless. It was a war that, whether we did it right or wrong, I'm not going to say, even though I have a strong opinion about that. But we all know that we could have done a better job when we left. And it's just so sad. But out of that, at least several people, including yourself, took it upon themselves. And you're talking about sleepless nights. Like, if you need to listen or read Michael's book, Life or Death at Abbey Gate, correct?
Yeah, Life and Death at Abbey Gate.
Life and Death at Abbey Gate. This book, I mean, just sleepless nights just to try to get someone home with almost no hope, and his family. We're talking about little kids here, and you guys did it. And it's just an incredible story, and please just go listen to it, especially if you're a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. I think it gives you, so for as bad as it went, it gives us some solace that, at least we got some people who put their lives on the line to help us while we were there. And it was even worse that we left them in the way that we did. But some people got here, and to other countries as well. And it's just incredible, and it's so great that they did, because they deserve it.
I think one of the most challenging parts about writing the book was just honestly interviewing the Marines that, the 2-1 Marines that were at Abbey Gate that day, and just seeing that desperate mass of humanity that you're talking about, and just seeing these horrible things, seeing these kids getting stuck in the sea wire, and seeing these kids get trampled to death and not being able to get to them in time, and seeing these kids drown in the shit-filled canal that was Abbey Gate. Like, these things leave lasting impacts on our young warriors, right? We know that. And Sergeant Zelinsky was a big part of the book, and one of the only reasons that my guys made it out. He was a 2-1 Marine, and I talk about it in the book where he actually had a child when he was on this deployment. And there's a moment at Abbey Gate where a young Afghan mother came up to him and didn't say a word and just handed over a baby to him. And Zelinsky looked down and realized that this baby was dead. And there was just, the mother just turned around and walked away, because what else was she going to do? And, that's a moment that sticks with you. And one thing he said to me during an interview was, I held that dead baby before I held my own baby. And that, wow, I was just like, wow, and that's just one of a million of the horrible things that these Marines saw on the ground. So going through those interviews was really tough, honestly. Like, we would spend hours interviewing these Marines, and such a large portion of it was just all of us crying because it was just so heavy.
Yeah.
But like you said, like there were victories, and that's what these guys cling to. Like Zelensky, for him to know that Abdul Muhammad and their families are here and safe because of him, I know it just means the world to him. So I know that's what they try to focus on.
Was he the Marine who came to Michigan and got to meet them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Zelensky flew out here. So he's 2-1. So obviously he's based down in Southern California, and he flew up to Michigan because he wanted to meet Abdul Muhammad and their kids. And it was probably one of the best days of my whole life. I mean, he came up and, I hugged him like we had been brothers our whole lives, and took him over to Abdul's, and Abdul's wife and Muhammad's wife made a beautiful Afghan meal for all of us. And, Zelensky got to hang out with their kids, and, just for them to, reconnect in a way less traumatic way was very cool. And Zelensky brought his dad with him. And I know I said this in the book, but for me, one of the coolest parts was watching Zelensky's dad watch him, because I could just see how proud this man was of his son. And it was a very special moment.
Dude, I'm trying not to cry right now.
Dude, I know I get choked. I've told this story a million times now, and I still get choked up.
Yeah. I don't know what to describe it, the humanity of it all, and just I feel fortunate to have been a person who has been in some interesting situations on 4 deployments, but I mean, I haven't seen that much. Those guys just at HKIA for however long they were there, a few weeks or whatever, saw more than I did in 4 deployments.
That's what you get when you join the military. You never know, right? You can be in a combat MOS for 20 years and 4 deployments like yourself, or you could be on your first deployment for 2 weeks to Afghanistan at HKIA as a young Marine, and you just never know what's going to happen. And that's when you sign that dotted line, you're agreeing to whatever comes.
I would say what I'm fortunate about is that I have experienced things that I'm trying to remember the exact quote, that freedom has a different taste for those who I don't remember the exact word. I think it was a Reagan quote, maybe. But
is it that have bled for it?
Something along those lines, yeah. And I was talking with my stepdad about that. He's a Vietnam veteran, and I mean, it just does. I was never one to take things for granted as a young man, like in high school, as a teenager. I just didn't. It's just maybe it was the way I was raised. My father, not super close, but he is a Marine. I don't know. I was fortunate to be raised by a mom who taught me to be thankful for things, and my faith taught me that as well. But I mean, I'm just extra thankful every day just to even have a shower. Like, I'll have electricity, air conditioning, all these great things we have. Internet right now, we're doing this. I think I'm honestly blessed to have been to these other countries and seen where they don't have as much diversity as us in the United States. It's a beautiful thing here, I think. And but these experiences really change people, and you can take a lot of good out of it and grow a lot and mature. And I think that's what our job now, having been through these experiences, is to share that with people and grow the people around us. I think that's a tool we have now.
Absolutely agree. I mean, I feel like, I honestly feel like I joined the military for this purpose. Like, I have no way to prove that, but that's just truly 100% how it feels for me now. Is like I joined the military to help Abdul Muhammad, and it really just kind of feels like a life purpose, right? And I don't say that in like bragging in any way, but it's yeah, I mean, just being able to hang out with them whenever I want now is wild, and I certainly don't take that for granted. And every time I get to hang out with them and their kids, it's special.
Yeah. So in their situation now, what is it that anyone listening or us, obviously bringing awareness is important, right? But becoming a man or woman of action, like awareness is cute. It's,
Hmm.
it's a tool, but like, what can we do to help them stay?
Hmm. It's so hard to answer. I mean, obviously, bugging your local leadership, your senator, your congressman, whatever,
Okay.
is one thing. Whether that moves the needle, probably not. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of NGOs that have formed coming out of the evacuation that are really pushing things along. Moral Compass Federation is one that really comes to mind, which is a collection of a bunch of smaller NGOs that were
Okay.
started out of the evacuation, and they're really pushing the government. I mean, if you Google it, you'll find other NGOs that are working to help our Afghan partners still.
Mm-hmm.
But donations to places like Moral Compass Federation is certainly a great way to support if you're looking for a way to help.
Okay. Cool. What we'll do is, for anyone listening, after we get this posted, we'll start putting some of that out. I'll get with Michael and we'll put some of that out on our Instagram and Facebook so that people can be aware how we can help.
Hmm.
And then if anything comes along to update, make sure you let us know. So,
Absolutely. No, I thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I hope people are interested in this topic because it's super important. I hope people read the book because we didn't get into any of the nitty gritty chaos that was the evacuation, but that's a good thing because we'll leave that for the reader. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about it.
yeah. And I mean, I was pretty riveted to that book. Like, I like audiobooks. I listen to them on the way to and from work and wherever I'm driving. And I was actually driving to drill on the other side of the state and getting into it. And um, I mean, we could get into so much about the book, but then you wouldn't need to read it or listen. And also, this would be the longest podcast ever.
Yeah, it could.
But, you know, I mean, I'd say for me, what I took from it, like I've said several times, be a man or woman of action, care about the people next to you, and I think it was a reminder to pay attention to the people next to you. It could be your neighbor. You know, I lived in Las Vegas for a few years and didn't really know my neighbors because this is kind of not how things are there. I moved to Michigan for a reason, and I know my neighbors now. And I think community is important. Community for the people who live next to you, community with the people you served with, community for the people in your town. Get to know them. That's how we strengthen each other to make a difference. Like, we're talking about how can we make a difference to help Abdul and his family stay here with this broken process that they're in now. And well, if you have a strong community and with connected leaders, that turns in a strong state with connected leaders who actually represent you at the national level instead of just talk. You know, there's a lot of I've been learning a lot listening to other podcasts and things like that. How Capitol Hill works, which you've gotten a big taste of, um, and it could be disheartening, but the only way we can't give up. That's not what this country's about. That's not how it was started. Uh, People gave up way more than us signing a petition or helping a nonprofit organization with some funds that actually takes action,
Hmm.
And I think it's important for us to actually do something here.
For sure. I appreciate you saying that. And I think, the other thing to remember is this: while the media has moved on, this evacuation still isn't over, and there's still hundreds of thousands of our Afghan partners that are still stuck in Taliban and still stuck in hiding from the Taliban, and
Hmm.
we have to remember that they're there and continue to help evacuate them.
Yeah. I mean, I was just listening to a story about um, a partner who was just given over to Al Qaeda by the Taliban. I mean, this is like this week.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's
So,
obviously a horrible situation there with the Taliban in complete control of the government, and they continue to hunt down our Afghan partners and execute them and do even worse than that.
yeah. So, all right. Well, watch out in the future from us. We're going to stay in touch with Michael on how we can help our partners that are here in the U.S. and across the world and the organizations. This is important to us as well. You know, Bunker Bros, we've spent time in the bunkers around the world, and, we all got to look out for each other. So, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. Uh, let's give us one more plug for the book here. Everyone needs to listen to it or read it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, Life and Death at Abbey Gate. It's available wherever you get your books: Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can get the physical copy, digital copy, or an Audible version as well. So, again, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk a little bit about the book.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us on From the Bunker, and we will see you next time. Have a good day.
Incoming.
Don't forget to head on over to bunker-bros.com and grab some merch.